It's been a while since I thought about the pain of not having a name. Other people are called by their names, but not me. It makes me feel. These are the words of the captain of the 11th Division. A division where every captain who held this position carried the title of Kenpachi, and the most iconic of them all, known for his eye patch, the scar on his face, and his constant thirst for worthy opponents to prove himself as the strongest through brutal battles, the monster Kenpachi Zaraki. Today, we're going to dive into the full story of the loneliest Shinigami when it comes to battles in Bleach. We'll explore both his Shikai and his Bankai, and recount his feats during the 1,000-year Blood War. This is going to be a complete breakdown of the monster. Before we start, if you like the theme of this video, don't forget to give it a like to help with the promotion, and most importantly, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're always updated when the next video comes out. Born in one of the poorest areas of Seirete, in the 80th district of Rukongai to the north, Zaraki grew up alone, wielding an asauchi he took from someone he killed in one of his bloody rampages. His life remained solitary until he met a little girl who, surprisingly, wasn't afraid of him. Just like him, she didn't have a name, so Zaraki decided to give her one, Yachiru Kusajishi. According to Zaraki himself, he named the little girl Yachiru because it was the name of the only person he ever admired. Zaraki's first appearance happens in chapter 65, where we get a glimpse of his competitive nature when he challenges Byakuya to a fight, only to be interrupted by Gin, the captain of the 3rd Division. Stepping back in time a bit, let's talk about the title of Kenpachi. Many wonder how he earned it and how he became the current captain of the 11th Division. The truth is, Zaraki killed the previous holder of the title and captain of the division, Kiganjo Kenpachi, securing his place as the new captain of the 11th Division. There's a very old tradition for anyone who takes the position of captain in this division to kill the current captain in front of witnesses and then carry the title of Kenpachi. Therefore, the title of Kenpachi is given to the strongest Shinigami of that generation. That's why there can't be two Kenpachi in the same generation, which explains the duel between Unohana and Zaraki. Every time we mention that the title of Kenpachi is given to the strongest Shinigami of that generation, some people might argue that another Shinigami is stronger. And that may be true, but the title holds this weight because the Shinigami who carries it is always on the front lines, with a bloodthirsty desire for battle, as the one who loves fighting the most and wields immense power. So, if there's another Shinigami who's stronger, that's a different discussion. Now, regarding the origin of the division and the captains who led it. First, we have the founder of the division and the first to carry the title of Kenpachi, Unohana Yachiru. In the first generation of the Gotei 13, said to be the most powerful and bloodthirsty generation ever, there was a woman who was a master of countless swordsmanship styles and flows. That's why she gave herself the name Yachiru, with Yachi meaning 8,000 or countless, and Ru meaning flow, forming Yachiru, 8,000 flows or countless flows. For reasons related to Zaraki, which we'll discuss shortly, she decided to step down as captain of the division and relinquish her title of Kenpachi, allowing future generations of Kenpachi to rise over time. After years and years with no one taking the position, we reach the 7th generation, where we have Kuruyashiki as the 7th Kenpachi. As mentioned before, Kuruyashiki became the 7th to bear this title after killing his predecessor in a death match with witnesses. His personality was similar to Zaraki's, being charismatic and well-known within the division, as well as having a powerful and overwhelming Reiyatsu. Right after Kuruyashiki, we have the 8th generation, represented by Asashiro Kenpachi, who challenged Kuruyashiki to a duel and killed him in front of his officers. Due to his actions, Asashiro was sent to Muken, and his name was erased from history. Then, his lieutenant became the 9th Kenpachi. After him came Kiganjo, and finally Zaraki Kenpachi. In chapter 523, we see the beginning of the Unohana versus Zaraki fight, with the purpose of unlocking Zaraki's true potential, under the orders of the current Gotei 13 commander, from chapters 523 to 527. These are the most important chapters to understand Zaraki's past with Unohana, the origin of his scar, the reason for the absence of Shikai and Bankai, and his constant trials in battle driven by the desire to find an opponent who could give him a sense of euphoria. It all starts in Rukongai when Unohana went on an expedition and found a child under a pile of corpses. Her lieutenant even mistook the carnage for her work, but that child was none other than Zaraki. Zaraki charges at Unohana, but she is unable to draw her sword quickly enough and is gravely wounded by him, a strong symbol of their fateful encounter, as both were bored from not having an opponent who could push them to their limits. The battle continues, evenly matched, until Unohana strikes Zaraki in the face, giving him his iconic scar. Interestingly, she admits that she was weaker than him at the time. After being defeated and receiving the scar on his face, Zaraki unconsciously began to limit himself over time, whether by wearing the eye patch that suppresses his Reiatsu, or by allowing his enemies to strike first to make the fight more exciting and to recapture the joy he felt in his battle with Unohana. This is one of the reasons Shunsui requests permission from Central 46 for Unohana to teach Zanjutsu, swordsmanship art of the sword, to Zaraki, to restore the true essence of Zaraki. Once the duel between the two begins, Unohana brings out Zaraki's true self by killing and reviving him repeatedly until he fully awakens. When the monster inside Zaraki finally emerges, and he stops unconsciously holding himself back, Unohana fulfills her duty and dies by his hand. Let me know in the comments if you think Unohana needed to die or not. Before Unohana collapses, Zaraki throws down his sword to catch her, and we get a sad moment where he tells her not to die. While holding her, Zaraki hears a voice calling out to him, and it's his Zanpakutou, telling him that it's always been by his side. Just as the Zanpakutou is about to reveal its name, the scene is cut off, and we only discover its name chapters later, during the fight against Gremmy, the stern ritter who can turn anything he imagines into reality, in chapter 573. When the battle begins, Gremmy imagines his body is stronger than iron, thinking Zaraki wouldn't be able to cut him. But then we get the classic panel of Zaraki saying, "Your imagination can't create anything I can't cut, because I am Kenpachi." The fight heats up, and then, in chapter 577, after Gremmy duplicates himself and summons a meteor the size of Serete, we get one of the most iconic scenes and feats of this arc, the unleashing of Zaraki Zanpakutou. Zaraki, seeing the meteor, leaps toward it. Pay close attention to Yachiru watching, as we'll talk about her, and says, "Name, Nozarashi. Drink, Nozarashi." Nozarashi means weathered by time, if we translate it literally. In an epic page, we see Zaraki slice through the meteor, followed by the reveal of his Zanpakutou form as pieces of the meteor fall across Serete. The form resembles a giant cleaver, even larger than Zaraki himself. And remember, Zaraki is taller than most captains. It also has some yellow details along with a ribbon at the end of the cleaver, giving his Zanpakutou a very distinct look. With this stunning introduction of Nozarashi slicing the meteor, Gremmy is shocked, screams that Zaraki is a monster, duplicates himself into 7 Gremmys, and summons outer space to trap and kill Zaraki within it. Here comes one of the most incredible feats of this arc. Gremmy can't close the portal in time, and Zaraki slices it open with his Zanpakutou, surviving a brief exposure to the vacuum of space. Not only that, but he manages to cut Gremmy, and despite being blasted by all the clones, he still stands. But it's not over yet. After failing to defeat Zaraki, Gremmy tries one last resort. He imagines his body with power equal to Zaraki's. Clearly, he can't handle it. His muscles tear apart, and his brain collapses. Thus ends Gremmy Thumo, the visionary, who couldn't foresee his own death. Afterward, Zaraki spits blood and notices Yachiru is gone, finding only her lieutenant uniform on the ground. And then Candace, Lil Tato, and Giselle appear. Zaraki tries to fight, but his body is already on the verge of breaking down. And to add to Zaraki's list of endurance feats, emphasizing that he truly is a monster, even after his organs were damaged by exposure to the vacuum of space, he still manages to fight and take some hits from the girls. But in the end, he collapses and can't move anymore. Remember when I told you to pay attention to the panel with Yachiru and how she disappeared after the fight? When Zaraki releases his Shikai, Yachiru has a flashback of when the two first met in Rukongai on the battlefield, with baby Yachiru crawling towards Zaraki's sword, ending with Zaraki asking what her name was, only to discover she didn't have one, and the rest we already know. As shown in earlier arcs, when a soul dies and leaves behind its clothing, it means the soul has dissipated. In Yachiru's case, her soul dissipated, undoing her materialized form and returning to the sword the moment Zaraki called out her true name, Nozarashi. Another question fans often ask is, so, if Yachiru was his Zanpakutou all along, how do we explain the Sanpo Kenju? Many get confused, thinking that Sanpo Kenju is Yachiru's Shikai, or that Yachiru had her own Zanpakutou. But it doesn't make sense for a Zanpakutou to have another Zanpakutou, as Zanpakutou are an extension of their wielder's soul. We only need to recall Ichigo's iconic line, "The blade is me." It's illogical, especially since when Yachiru calls upon Sanpo Kenju, there's no release ritual or anything. The monsters simply appear behind her and mimic her movements. To further clarify, even Isane, Unohana's former lieutenant, thinks to herself, is this a Shikai? It's not like a sword that can transform into a living being like Captain Unohana's, nor like Captain Hitsugaya's, where the material appears to be a living creature. Her sword hasn't changed. I didn't know such a Shikai existed, and indeed, such a thing doesn't exist. It's all a manifestation of Zaraki's own power. In short, Yachiru was always Zaraki's Zanpakutou, unconsciously manifested into the physical world in the past. We've seen a similar example with Renji being able to manifest his Zabimaru Yachiru during his training in the Soul Society arc. However, because Zaraki suppressed his own power and named his Zanpakutou no Zarashi under another name, Yachiru, he was unable to use his Shikai or Bankai for all those years. And since Zaraki treated Yachiru as if she were a Shinigami, she ended up adopting powers similar to a Shinigami, including the ability to emulate her own Shikai, in quotes. It's even possible that Kubo didn't always plan for Yachiru to be the manifestation of Zaraki's power, but I think it was a well-executed plot twist. Yachiru was a nameless lost girl because Zaraki himself was a nameless lost boy, and as we know, a Zanpakutou reflects the spirit of its wielder, which is why they were so similar. Yachiru represented the pure and innocent side of the child that still existed within Zaraki. Now that we've explained why Zaraki didn't have a Shikai or Bankai before awakening them, and why Yachiru disappeared right after Zaraki released his Zanpakutou no Zarashi, let's talk about his Bankai. Skipping ahead a few chapters after his battle with Gremi, in chapter 669 we see the release of his Bankai during the fight against Gerard, who's part of the Quincy King's elite group. Before he releases his Bankai, it's worth mentioning the number of injuries Zaraki sustained during the fight. First, Gerard slashes him almost in half, yet Zaraki continues to fight Gerard head-on. Keep in mind that he had already removed his eye patch in this fight. Then several sword strikes from Gerard and on until Zaraki can't take it anymore and collapses. Unable to stand, Zaraki sees Yachiru again, but this time she appears only to him in his inner world. "What are you doing, Ken-chan? Come on, get up. If you use me properly, there's nothing you can't cut. The name of this power is Bankai." And with a surge in power, his appearance transformed into that of a horned, red-skinned Oni, losing all rationality. This was a Zaraki we had never seen before. His Bankai embodies the combination of aggression, savagery, and unpredictability that he possesses, along with immense brute strength, because there is nothing he cannot cut. After awakening, Zaraki bites off Gerard's entire arm, then quickly leaps and slices Gerard in half with a single cut. Unfortunately, the fight doesn't end there, as Gerard recovers and assumes a new form thanks to his miracle ability. Just as Zaraki is about to cut him down again, his arm implodes, and Yachiru explains that she gave him too much power, so his body couldn't withstand such a massive spike in strength. But why exactly does he take the form of an Oni? As we know, Bankais are extremely diverse, and they don't always manifest as a sword. Mayuri's Bankai is a giant baby, representing his ultimate experiment, almost like a child born from his own scientific pursuits. In the same way, Bankais are extensions of the Shinigami spirit. Zaraki transforming into an Oni reflects his most primal, malevolent desires, murder, cannibalism, and so on. It's a more intense version of who he has always been, with a hint of Japanese folklore. With mastery, his Bankai could become incredibly dangerous and lethal, an unpredictable horned Oni with overwhelming brute strength and insane speed, so fast that even Gerard couldn't react in time. Now imagine all that controlled by a rational Zaraki. It's hard to place his Bankai in a precise ranking compared to other captains, but it's on par with Kyoraku Shunsui's in terms of being one of the strongest among the current captains. Determining which Bankai is strongest involves many factors, but Reiatsu is key. As if that weren't enough, Zaraki was named one of the 5 war potentials due to his combat strength, so you can imagine just how powerful he is. If we throw Aizen, Ichigo, and others into the mix, that's a topic for another video. So that's it, folks. What did you think of the video? Comment below if you want more Bleach content on the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!